Hey Gators! For International Women's Week, PISA wanted to highlight some of the incredible women here at BU. We had the opportunity to interview Dr. Osire Glacier, a professor here at Bishop's currently teaching politics and religion, sex and religion, Islam, submission to Allah, and international law and human rights. Born and raised in Morocco until the age of 17, a strong interest for equality, democracy, and human rights sparked in Dr. Glacier. Growing up surrounded by political activists, she saw firsthand the conflicts that accompany the fight for democracy and human rights. After living in 6 different countries and traveling around the world, Dr. Glacier decided to take her interest to a new level and complete her doctorate. She is now a professor here at Bishop's in the Religion, History, and Politics and International Studies departments. Dr. Glacier is also a prolific author. To date, she has published 5 books, 3 of them translated in English, and all of them considered some of the greatest accomplishments in her career so far. Glacier's books revolve around her areas of expertise, being women's history, politics of gender, sexuality, and human rights in post-colonial Morocco. We spoke with Dr. Glacier about how she discovered her interest in human rights, her career, and some advice for women on how to be successful in the field of politics and international studies. We hope you take the time to listen to Dr. Glacier, an incredibly successful woman that we are proud to have here at BU.
All right, so welcome everyone. Welcome Dr. Glacier. So we just wanted to speak to you a little bit about your experience in the politics, religion, history field that you study in.
Thank you for your interest. And first of all, I just want to thank you very much for this initiative. And also, I want to congratulate you for the work that you are doing. It's wonderful to see a team of young women having wonderful initiatives, innovative initiatives, and trying to bring to other peers, issues about women, about studying in political science, and having eventually an international law, international human rights, international studies career. So congratulations. It's very satisfying to see this.
So can you speak a little bit about yourself, your current position, your career trajectory, and your education, how you ended up where you are today?
Just like to introduce a little bit myself. I want to say that I was born in Morocco and grew up to Morocco until the age of 17. And then I felt that if I want to go further ahead in my life, I needed to go abroad to study in France. And so I belong to the first generation of women who had access massively to education. So I was brought up with the idea that studying, that access to education is a right that I cannot take for granted, or I cannot take it lightly. So it was very important for me and my generation of women, but also young men, to invest in our education, because that's the door or the key to open up doors in the world, but also the key to higher accomplished self. So I was very aware of that. And also I saw many women in our surroundings, in my surroundings, who were very dissatisfied with their lives. And they couldn't change their lives because they did not have the means, the skills, the professional talents to change their lives. So some of them, they invest in their children and in their daughters, sons, but daughters, in the meaning that they encourage them to study, encourage them to pursue other paths of life other than gendered traditional roles. Others were more privileged, and those who were a bit more privileged, then they would organize in groups, women groups, or political parties, unions, and so on. And maybe this is what leads me to believe that the idea that feminism is a Western product or a product of colonialism, that is a misbelief, that is a misconception. Because feminism in Morocco, like when I see my mother's generation, my generation, it originated within the unfavorable status of women and their awareness that this isn't right. This is the result of a masculine, highly patriarchal definition of culture, religion, traditions. And also another important component to maybe my identity, my work, is that my parents' generation were involved in anti-colonial struggles. And I was born, Morocco was independent and so on. However, my parents' generation were involved in modern state building. And I saw generation of men and women around me who lost everything. You know, they had nothing except their human dignity and the resilience and standing up and asking for their rights in front of a ruling elite. Here it's a monarchy, and those who benefited from colonialism there was such an imbalance of power, they didn't necessarily win the fight. And so for me, I saw that the idea that democracy, that the pursuit of human rights, basic rights, fundamental freedom is not a Western product either. It has been built like that or portrayed like that, but I very much see it as a discourse that tried to delegitimate rights, fundamental freedoms for citizens in this part of the world. So that's something that I was very well aware of. And I think after I studied, then maybe I felt what we know about the world, what we think we know about the world is very much a definition, it's very much shaped by power dynamic, be it between sexes, between nations, but also between the ruling elite and those who are governed. And so I wanted at the time just like to see what is the real world by my own eyes and what is my place in this world. So that maybe put me after like I traveled, I saw the world, then I felt I can, as an adult, go back to education, do a master's degree, do a PhD, and that's what I did when I came back to Quebec.
Perfect. So for our next question, we were wondering who was a role model for you at the beginning of your career? Who did you look up to?
Okay. There were several voices in my own field because like once I start doing my PhD and so on, when I talk about my own field, I mean human rights, political violence, women's rights. So I can definitely quote as a scholar, political scientist, Susan Waltz, and I respect the work that she has done because she did United Nations archival research in order to bring us a fresh view as to how these human rights came to exist. And she deconstructed the belief that human rights are Western, because she showed that actually non-Western world were present to the writing process of all those universal rights. Burke he is a historian of human rights. It's the same methodology, but another time frame. So I was very much inspired by his work. And then there were other indifferent works like Sociologist, Marnia, Lazreg. And like, for instance, she wrote a book called The Eloquence of Silence, among others, about how women, Algerian women, were involved in anti-colonial struggle, how they were, they fought next to men, they were tortured, they were everything. But then when it came to modern state building, they were sent back home. And then the question, what happened, why? She wrote also a book about political violence, about torture during the colonial time in Algeria, but then in Iraq. So her work is very powerful, and I think it was an inspiration for me to address some of the questions that she rose. And of course, there are many others, such as, like Leila, Ahmad, Edouard Said, who brought us knowledge about non-Western cultures and gave voices to the people and a better understanding of non-Western perspectives without the lens of Euro-centric perspective. So that was very powerful. So I think those are few, and of course there are others. Like I can name international jurist Antony Anghie, Diane Otto, Ratna Kapur, who were very much interested about the hegemony within international law, and how can we like save human rights at the same time. So all those are questions that were very much of interest to me. And that explains that maybe my approach is pluridisciplinary rather than a regular focus in terms of legal approach or maybe political science approach, because human rights, women's rights can lend themselves to a pluridisciplinary approach, study from different disciplines to complement one another.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like I have a couple of readings to do after this. I'm excited.
Yeah, those are wonderful scholars, definitely. They wrote very powerful books.
Yeah. So when you first started working, did you work with many women, or were there many women working in your field? And has that changed at all since you first started?
You know, like I no, not very women, but I can even go back to, like, for instance, when I was doing my PhD in McGill University. And so, like, basically when I started, and this is not too long ago, this is in 2001, there wasn't one single woman in the department. Like a couple of years before I graduated, then they hired one woman, and then they hired couple two. But it remains a predominantly male department, but also Eurocentric department. So very much when we look, when we examine just about every institution, be it educational institution, NGOs, government, companies, we see that women, and certainly non-Western women, are misrepresented. And there are also studies that are done that shows that not only women are misrepresented, but they're not valued as they deserve to be valued. With similar education, similar job. This is in Canada. According to Global Gender Gap report, women make about 78 cents for every dollar a man make. And when it comes to women immigrants, like from an ethnic group or an immigrant community, whatever, women, educated women, they make like 59% of what a man is doing. So we have a lot of work to do to deconstruct the idea that consider women's work just as not a serious job. You know, we can pay them just a little bit because the real provider is a man. In reality, women are the head of households. There are many households who the head of the household is a woman and she's caring for children and so on. So we need to deconstruct this kind of traditional ideas that are still in the job market.
Yes, I agree. So our next question is, what was the defining moment in your career?
Like a defining moment?
A defining moment,
well,
yeah.
Yeah, there were several stages, I guess, at least for me. When I was doing my PhD, I think there is a moment where I felt like there was like definitely kind of a breakthrough where I felt that, wow, I am able to write in a professional manner, where I felt there was a switch from somebody who write for themselves to somebody who is writing for others. So that I felt that, and I was very happy that that happened, because before I think I pursued a teaching career. I am very happy to teach. I am very happy to be in touch with young people and to share knowledge, because otherwise, what's the point if we don't share knowledge? And at the same time, my goal was like to write. And so like that was a definite moment. And also there was another, there were like 2 or 3 moments, and I think that are equally important, was like when I graduated with a PhD. So what happened is that I always knew that I wanted to be a writer. And I always knew which teams that I will be interacting or covering. So I knew it's women, political violence, gender equity, and so on. So that was clear. But it's not because it's clear that I know how to do it. So I didn't know how to do it. Add to that, I didn't know how to start, where to start. But then, it just like from writing the dissertation, the papers, doing the reading. Once I was like just getting my diploma, and then I had a vision of all what I want to write, in which area, how it starts, and that was very clear. And I was like, wow, I got the diploma, but I worked hard for it, but this is what it came with it. So that was a defining moment. And also, I guess when I published my first book. So for me, that was like kind of a validation, or yeah, you're right. This is you're professional. Now you're writing for others, and now you're starting the vision that you had when I had my dissertation, my diploma.
Perfect. And maybe for the people who will be watching, what was your first book on? What was the subject that it focused on?
It was they were two in different ways, because I wrote my dissertation, and it is published, and the book is in university. I had to rewrite it down to make it a book that's not a dissertation. So it's called Universal Rights, Systemic Violations, and Cultural Relativism in Morocco. So about the role that torture played in silencing democratization on one hand. And also I'm very much concerned about giving a voice to women, like visibility to women, because there were many political opponents who were women, who were tortured in prison. But just because they're women, we kind of think it's like political science, the scene, history, everything is masculine. So we kind of like don't see them. So I gave a voice. I would quote them all along the book to make the points that I was making. So there was like the dissertation, and in parallel, because like when I received my diploma, I had many ideas. Then I start working on, this is a research intensive book. It's about giving visibility to political women who governed. We don't know this. And so the book, it's in the library, in Bishop Library. It's called Political Women in Morocco Then and Now. And so like when we look at the official history or the official discourse, the political scene, history, the kings, the ministers, the vizier in Arabic, they are all men. But then when I was like doing my PhD, doing research, then I came across amazing women. I mean, like incredible women, and some of them, just like to give you an image, one of them was the Queen of North Morocco, the governor of North Morocco, and at the same time she was the leader of pirates in the Mediterranean Sea. And it seems like this is so contradictory, but for her it was like kind of waging war against Spanish and Portuguese, because they were attacking Morocco, and it was like her way of attacking them, so they won't come close to the borders, the shores of Morocco. So I wrote those, and actually they were both published in the same time in 2013, both of them.
Wow, that you must have been very busy.
I'm still is.
I'd love to ask, what advice do you have for men to be allies to women who are working in the field that you're in?
That's a very good question. The first, it would be, maybe a question I have to ask young women, but young men as well. Is the new generation of men and women more sensitive, or men are more sensitive to women's issues or not? Because I definitely, like I lived half a century, and I can tell it's highly patriarchal. And also I can tell that mentalities are changing, and changing gently. Okay, so question mark, are young men more sensitive or not? From my experience, I feel, number one, I feel there is a misinformation about women's issues. I feel as if there is a backlash against feminism, the belief that wow, we achieved everything and feminism is just like some old angry women. But when you analyze international statistic, be it UN statistic, be it the global gender gap report, be it the country reports like either Canada, whatever, about women's situation, there isn't one single country in the world, including Scandinavian countries who are the first ranking in terms of gender inequalities, who achieved gender equality. So we did not as humanity. So I think the challenge is get out of the belief that we achieved gender equality. We did not. The other thing is maybe be informed, and this is contemporary, because my generation, we didn't live that. Because there was no internet, it wasn't the same thing. So to be informed about the role that sex industries are playing in alienating women, but also alienating men, but also selling us sex as the ultimate enjoyment of life, when in fact the version of sex they are selling us, it's the commodification of intimate life. Okay, it's a whole topic by itself, but it is contemporary. To be informed as well about the beauty norms, the impact of beauty norms about women, young women, but also even nowadays men, because it used to be only an issue of women who are anorexic or being depressed, having eating disorders and so on. But now even men start to have eating disorder. And so how it alienates, it is alienating. We don't see how it is affecting women's professional, academic, or university achievements, athletic achievement, and so on, because you don't feel good about your body, in your body. And that's such an important, this is our first home, it's our body. And so it is very important to feel good. However, the norms they are selling us are not realistic. Nobody is good enough, okay? So that's another one. The other one is, which I touched already a word, it's to be informed about the discrimination de facto, not de jure, legal, but de facto, that women are going through, that they may not go through, and so they don't know it. Whereas us women, we live it, we know it, such as men usually are considered as a voice of authority, whereas women, and more so like if she's gentle or she's soft-spoken, there'll be always somebody cutting her off and explaining to her her life, or explaining to her this and that, which we know as mansplaining, okay? M'explicateur in French. And so, but that's ultimately undermining the fact that women are a voice of authority, women are experts, but we don't want to see it. There's always that paternalistic control of what a woman is saying or doing, and it is still there. And maybe the last thing, because young men in political science, they will be the future men who will be policy makers. You know, they'll be policy makers, they'll be working in NGOs, in governments, and so on. And so I highly advise them maybe to take a course or training about gender mainstreaming in order to be sensitive to the issue and to include women's rights, women's specific need in every policy or every decision that they are making. So I guess those are some broad lines that I can think of at this moment.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
We were just wondering if there's anything you'd like to add, if there's anything you'd like to say about international women, or something you'd like to add.
Okay, maybe if I have an advice, like I would say to women, is that to keep in mind that a professional career is a personal path. For some, it may be a linear path, but for other, it may not be as linear, the regular thing, you do a master's degree, you do a PhD, you work in the field. It may not be this. It may be something specific. So then I advise, if I have I share in my life, my professional life experience, for young women to listen to their uniqueness. What comes to you? What is your, identify your unique talent? What comes to you easily? What do you enjoy doing? Invest into that, because you may have a talent, but then we need to work on it and pursue it and believe in yourself, because ultimately it's by our work that we show or that we prove who we are in life. There'll be challenging time at any moment, but ultimately self-confidence, resilience, and walking on the professional, personal path and the goals that we set for ourselves. I guess that's the main thing I guess I can share.
That's incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you speaking with us today, sharing your story, sharing your experiences. They're incredibly unique, and so we are very thankful to be able to hear from you.
Thank you for hosting me. Thank you for having me.
So all of Dr. Glacier's books that she's written, as well as a link to her website, will be included in the description for this video. So please feel free to check out any of those and see some of the research that she's done on the topic of women in Morocco, women in politics, and international human rights.
Thank you. Thank you for this initiative.